Hey guys, and welcome to my top 5 favorite SFF books of 2016. So to start off with a couple qualifiers, this is not necessarily things that came out in 2016, but things that I read in 2016, although several of them did come out in 2016 as well. So I'm not going to be doing, like last year I did a few different top 5s. This year I'm only going to be doing this top 5 and an audiobook top 5 because I felt like most of what I read this year was SFF, science fiction and fantasy, and I don't think I have enough of the other genres that I read to pick like a top 5, so I decided to do top 5 SFF and top 5 audio. And this does not disclude audiobooks, this top 5 SFF. The top 5 audio will be more like top 5 audiobook experiences that I've had this year. As in, they may not be necessarily, as a book, my favorite books ever, but I really enjoy the audiobook experience, whether it just translated really well to audio, or the audiobook narrator was really great, or just the experience of it in general was really good. And that happened several times throughout this year. In fact, it happened with a lot of series, and you'll see that in the audiobook top 5, which I'll put out sometime within the next couple of days. I think it'll come out tomorrow. But there are some audiobooks in this one too, but I think once you watch both videos, you'll kind of see the difference that I'm talking about. So I do actually have a few like honorable mentions before I get into the actual top 5, things that just barely didn't get into the top 5 for whatever reason. So I'll start with those real quick. The first one of those is Seven Eves by Neil Stephenson. I really enjoyed this book for the most part. Throughout the entire book, I thought it would be one of my favorite reads of the year, and it was still one of my favorite reads of the year. It was my first experience with Neil Stephenson, and I really enjoyed his writing. I really enjoyed this story. It's basically about the moon suddenly explodes into 7 pieces, and it's not just about that, but it's about the aftermath of that, some very catastrophic aftermath of that, plus how we as the human race try to deal with it and try to keep ourselves going, how we try to save ourselves from the catastrophes that happen after the moon explodes into those 7 pieces. And the first half of the book I really loved, and I just flew right through. The second half of the book was a little bit more difficult for me. I still really liked it, but there were certain bits of it that just kind of dragged on for me, and I just felt like after a while I just wanted it to be over, that second half, and it went in some kind of weird directions that I'm not sure I feel about. But I did overall really enjoy this one, and like I said, it just kind of barely missed out on being in the top 5 because there were some other books that I wanted to put before it. So also, I just wanted to make clear that I'm not going to be talking too in depth about any of these, because I did do full reviews of several of them, and also I've just talked at length about all of them on my channel before in weekly wrap-ups or in reviews, like I said. So some of these I won't be talking about a whole lot. But I did, like this one, I did a full review on. This is another honorable mention. This is Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. I really enjoyed this. This is the beginning of his new series called The Legends of the First Empire. It takes place way before the Rhea Revelations and Rhea Chronicles, but that you don't have to read those before you read this. You can start with this if you want to. He works very hard to make sure you can start wherever you want to within his series. And I really like this, and I did a full review of it, like I said, and I talked quite a bit about why I liked it and the things about it and stuff, and you should go watch that if you want to know more about it. But I feel like this is just the beginning. Like, I really like the characters, I really like the world and the magic, and it was really interesting, but I feel like this is just the beginning of something much greater, and I feel like I can't necessarily, it's completely one of my absolute favorites of his, but I do believe that it is the start to something, the series that'll be much better as it goes along. And this year, in 2017, the next book comes out, and I'm very excited for that one. You can bet that I'm going to get it and read it and review it as soon as I possibly can. So definitely look out for that, and definitely look out for me talking more about the series, and definitely give this a shot if you love epic fantasy. I very highly suggest his writing in general. So, I mean, I've talked at length about him before. And then also, another one that just kind of barely missed out is this. This is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. You may have remembered that I also did a review on this one, a full review, and you should go watch that if you want to know my full thoughts on it. But I think with this one, I read it really quickly. It thrilled me. It took me on a roller coaster ride, and I just couldn't put it down when I was reading it, and I really, really enjoyed it while I was reading it, and I still really like it. Looking back on it, I still really like it a lot. But since then, I have heard some criticisms towards it, and while I personally really enjoyed it, I did take some of those criticisms to heart and kind of understood what they were saying, and it kind of was like, okay, maybe a lot of it was just that I read through it really quickly, and when I read through books quickly like that and really enjoy them right away, I tend to not think about it too hard afterwards. I tend not to look at any of those criticisms. So while I still really recommend this book and think it's a lot of fun, especially if you like thrillers, if you like science fiction, maybe you should also like thrillers at the same time, because it's not necessarily the best science fiction book, but it's definitely a great thriller. So if you like thrillers, really quick, snappy, and easy to read, and fun, fast-paced thrillers, give this a shot, and go watch my review for more of what it's about. It's basically about this guy who is kidnapped and taken into another version of his life, an alternate version of what his life could have been, and him trying to get back to his old life and his family. So it's really interesting, and it's a lot of fun. So I do have one more honorable mention, but this one is more like, it's obvious that it's one of my favorites. Bands of Mourning by Brandon Sanderson. This is probably my favorite Wax and Wayne book, and easily one of my favorite books of the year because of that. But I did feel like there was several books, like the top 5 that I'm going to show you, that were just ahead of this one in my favorites overall. But this is definitely one of my favorite Wax and Wayne books, and I very much enjoyed it. I can't wait for the Wax and Wayne sequence to continue. Really love this book, but it's still just an honorable mention for right now. So the top 5, let's get into that real quick. I'll show you this one first. I have a couple physical books and then some audiobooks I want to talk to you about. So the first physical one is this. It's City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the first in a trilogy. The second one came out last year, City of Blades. I haven't read it yet, but I plan on reading it this year because the third book comes out this year. So I'm going to read the second book and the third book this year. And this one was just fantastic. I heard a lot of people talking about this in 2015. But a lot of people, this was on their favorites list for 2015 for releases in 2015. And I can easily see why it's such a great fantasy book. It's about the city called Bulakov that used to have gods and miracles all throughout it all the time. But the gods have all been killed. They're all gone. They're all dead. Another place called Sapor. They used to be like the underlings to Bulakov because they had the gods were not very kind to Sapor, but now Sapor has the upper hand and is putting restrictions on Bulakov and what they can have as far as like religious artifacts for their gods. And a historian from Sapor is sent to Bulakov and then murdered, and then an investigator is sent to Bulakov to kind of investigate his murder. And it's got such great ideas on like religion, gods. It's got a great mystery, and the city itself is just a lot of fun to read about. It's got great history, and I'm really looking forward to reading more in this trilogy. Robert Jackson Bennett's writing is really fantastic too, so definitely give that a shot if you have not already. I'll talk about an audiobook next real quick, and that is one I did a full review for actually. It's called Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson. This one takes place on a generation ship where you get to see the like chief engineer of that generation ship and how she is working to make this trip a success. And then we follow her daughter, and their daughter's like the main character, and we follow her throughout her journey to the planet they're supposed to be going towards and some complications with that. And yeah, I talk about it much more in that review, and I definitely suggest reading this. This is my first Kim Stanley Robinson book, and now I want to read everything that he's written, especially the Mars trilogy, which I plan on reading this year, and he has another book coming out this year as well, and I'll be reading that and reviewing that. And I highly suggest this for anyone that likes science fiction. So let's just go ahead and do another audiobook. It is Embassy Town by China Mieville. This one, I did not do a full review for, but I was thinking about doing a full review, but then I never got the chance to. And then Joe from Final Blow Joe did a full review of this one, and I'll link his review to it down below. So you can go check that out, because he does a very good job of explaining what it is and basically saying why I liked it, and he really liked it as well. This is such a fascinating, fantastic science fiction book. It's so weird. It's perfectly China Mieville weird. Actually, my first of his books, I read another one by him this year as well, and it really made me want to read everything that he's written. He is fantastic. I loved his writing. I loved the ideas behind this. It's basically about this alien race who can't understand us as individuals when we speak, but they can understand us when we speak as one. So the society starts breeding and training from birth these individuals to basically be a hive mind together. These two individuals would be raised together and taught to speak as one to this alien race, because that's the only way the alien race can understand us, is if we speak exactly at the same time, the exact same words with another person. And it's really interesting, especially the audiobook for this one was a really good audiobook, because the names of the people that do this, the human beings that are 2 and 1 that do this, their names are really interestingly done in the audiobook, and just a lot of the stuff in the audiobook probably wouldn't have worked as well for me if it was in print, if I read it in print. So I highly suggest the audiobook, and I highly suggest this book in general. It's got a lot of great ideas on the language in general. He really goes into depth in great exploration on language, and I really loved it. The next will actually probably be no surprise. It is the full Three Body Problem trilogy by Cixin Liu. There's a bookmark in the Three Body Problem because Giselle is reading it right now and liking it, which is great. But I read all of these back to back, and I have reviews out for these two so far as of this video. As of me filming this video. The review for the third one is not out yet as of me putting this up, but it should be out very shortly, I promise. And I have 2 giveaways for these out right now as well, so if you have not seen those giveaways, you should go check them out. They'll be open for like another week or so from the time I post this. The Three Body Problem, like I said, I did full reviews of these. You can go see my thoughts on them, especially if you've already read 1 or 2 of them and you want to see what my thoughts are on the second and the third one. Then definitely go watch those reviews whenever the third one is up. But I really enjoyed these quite a bit. I don't want to go too much into what they're about here because I don't want to spoil anything for you. But the Three Body Problem, I feel like it was not the strongest book in the trilogy. Definitely, it's my least favorite. The Three Body Problem is my least favorite in the trilogy. But I did really still enjoy it. I like the ideas in it. There's a lot of really cool ideas in this series. The first one is kind of lacking in character, but then the second and the third one, to me, feel like they brought in a lot more interesting character aspects as well. And they're so chock full of ideas that I just could not help but loving them. There's just some great science fiction, and especially the second one. After reading the first one, I really liked it, and I had to continue on with the second one to see what happened. But the second one really challenged me, and really, not necessarily, I didn't find it hard to understand, but it challenged my view on everything. It was just really fun to read that and to experience that. And the third one was just such an epic conclusion to the trilogy. So I very highly recommend you read all of these. Please read all of them. And then last but not least, in fact, this is probably my favorite read of the year, which is really funny because I don't entirely know why it works so well for me. I mean, I do, but it does have its flaws, but I still loved it. And that is Free the Darkness and Reign of Madness by Kel K. This is the King's Dark Tidings series, and these are the first 2 books. Those are the only books that are out so far. And the third one should be coming out this year, and I'm so excited for it. Just like some of the other ones, I did a full review of the first book, Free the Darkness, and you should really go check out that review. I really am happy with how that review went. I'm just really happy to be talking about this because this was a self-published series that then Podium Publishing, an audiobook company, picked up and published on Audible, and I'm so happy they did. And it's narrated by Nick Podell, who is one of my favorite narrators now, and I've loved everything about this. It's about this guy named Rezkin who is raised in this very secluded fortress where he is taught to only follow these very specific rules. And then this kind of tragedy happens that surrounds him, and his upbringing there kind of comes to an end, and he's sent off into the world. And it's just really interesting to see him because he's kind of a sociopath, and it's really interesting to see from his perspective. But besides being a sociopath, he's also this really mix of being a sociopath and being a really good person, because he never, ever lies. He always tells the truth, but he doesn't quite understand anything about being a human being. So it's quite an interesting little dynamic, and it's so much fun to see his relations with other people throughout the first book. And I mentioned this in the review that I did for the first book. Some of the characters are they feel like they're there only to praise and serve his story, and they totally are in a lot of ways. But as you go more and more throughout the first book, and especially the second book, you get to see more and more of those characters shine through. Especially the female characters, they seem kind of crazy and ridiculous throughout all of the first book because they're just kind of fawning over him, especially this one character. But it gets less and less crazy as it goes along, and less ridiculous. And I actually really enjoyed that a lot. I feel like the more and more you look past the surface of who that character is, the female character is, you get to see more of who she is and how great of a person she is. And also there's this really great, I didn't mention this in the review I did, which the only thing I regret about that review, I forgot to mention this, and it happens in the second book too, of course. that there's this really great female-male friendship in there as well. You don't see that very often, where there's not a romantic relationship between a male and a female, and it's not the main character and the main female character. It's like the secondary male character is the best friend of the main female character, and their relationship, their friendship is really fantastic to read about, and I really like them a lot. Rezkin just comes across so many different people, and they're all just drawn to him, and it's easy to see why they're drawn to him. He's a very compelling character, and he's probably one of my favorite characters now, especially by the end of the second book. There's just some epic moments in the second book that I honestly went back and rewound in the audiobook and kept listening to, because they just kind of made my jaw drop and gave me chills, and I really like him as a character quite a lot. I like the actions he takes, and his growth throughout the first 2 books is really, really awesome. There's so much to see past the surface in all of the characters and in the world. There's a lot happening behind the scenes in the world, and there's some interesting magic that comes through, especially in the second book. You get to learn more and more about the magic that's in this world, and it's just a great epic fantasy, and I hope you'll give it a shot, because I think a lot of people would really like it. I think you would have some problems with some of the ridiculousnesses of the secondary characters that are all surrounding Rezkin, and I kind of just found them to be funny a lot of the time because of how ridiculous they were, but also they kind of warmed my heart the more and more the books went on. Because you get to learn so much about them and get to see past their surfaces, and you get to see who they are as people and how they relate to Rezkin and how he relates to them and how he learns to relate to them. So it's a lot of fun. I very highly recommend it. Please check it out. I think that's about it for this top 5. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will check out some of these books that I talked about. If you've read any of them, I would love to hear your thoughts on them, and if you enjoyed them as much as I did, I would love for you to go check them out. Please let me know if you have checked them out. I would love to hear if you are intending to, and thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you very soon with more.